Welcome everyone. So today I wanted to tell to you some of the basic pawn endgames. Okay, so let's get started. So the first one, the two concepts I wanted to explain in that one. So the first concept is what we call opposition. Now, these are the concepts. Okay, what I will say, it's only related to the pawn endgames. So first is opposition. What is the meaning of opposition? Opposition means odd number of square or squares between kings. Now over here in this position, you can see that odd number, right? That is 1, 3, 5 opposition. If this king will move back, example, is this an opposition? No, because now over here there are only two squares between kings. So this is not an opposition. If this king moves back, now this is an opposition. Why? Because there is a three squares between kings. If the king moves back again, this is not an opposition because it's 4 square, 4 is even number. And if this king moves more back, now it's an opposition 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this opposition concepts works in every direction, not like only the vertical one. Now just example, if the king moves over here and this is also an opposition, it's called diagonal opposition. The same thing after the move king here, if the king moves on this side and king moves here, still this is also an diagonal opposition. And the same thing if they just, for example, goes back, this is not an opposition because it's 2 square only. And if the king moves more, then it's 3 squares, right? So again, this is also an opposition. And this is called, of course, you can say distant diagonal opposition. If you see the proper text, proper word for it, it is distant diagonal opposition. Now, and the most important point, what is the benefit of an opposition? When you take the opposition, especially in the pawn endgame, somewhere the game result goes in your favor. Somewhere the game control goes in your favor. That is a difference you create when you take the opposition. Now example, in this position, if the king moves here and black moves on this square, so who is taking the opposition? Black is taking the opposition because black is the one who comes and it's like yes. So black took the opposition. That one you have to understand. So simple, odd number of square or squares between two kings. So it's maybe vertically, maybe horizontally, maybe diagonally. Anything can be possible. Next one. Next is called outflanking. Outflanking, basically it means after the opposition, in the opposition situation generally, both the kings they moves in a different direction. Example, the king moves here. Okay, so if the black king moves on c5, it's an opposition, as I told to you. But if the same king moves on c4, so as you can see, they both are basically they're moving in the different direction. I'm not quoting to you the exact definition of the books. I just explaining to you a simple thing, like simply they're just moving in the different direction. That's it. It is called opposition, outflanking. I'm sorry. Okay, so simple. Remember, your king goes left, opponent king goes right, or your king goes right, opponent king goes left. That is called outflanking. Okay, in the opposition situation. Now let's move to the some of the positions to deal with, and we will see at how the opposition works at it. Okay, thumb rule. In the pawn endgame, your king should be in the front of the pawn. Why? So that the pawn, your king will just remove the obstacles and the pawn can move for the promotion. Now in this position, as you will see, that your king is behind the pawn. So which means this position is a draw. But we will see this position from the black side. When we see the position from the black side, it looks like black is losing, right? Because first of all, black cannot win in this position because black don't have any kind of a winning material. So what will happen and how the black will hold for that rook. Example, this position is white. White just played. If the white played like e2, d2 or c2, that simple king will just capture the pawn. So the king moves over here. So what you have to do with the black king, you will just move back and simply just move back and wait for it. And whenever opponent kings will comes up to show up like king to c4. Now what move you will play? You will move the king on a c6. So what you are doing? You are taking the opposition. So the game will go in your favor. Example, he plays the move pawn to d5. What he will do over here? Just wait for it. King moves to d4. Again, now don't go over here. Don't go on a e7, because what will happen? Your opponent can go on a c5, or maybe, of course, it can be a draw, but then it will be a bit difficult for you. The king to e5. Now who is taking the opposition? White is taking the opposition. So don't do that. What you have to do? Just calmly just wait. And when your opponent wants to show up, now you will take the opposition. The king moves back. Then you will just move back. And once again, for example, king to e4. Again, just move back and wait for it. And whenever he wants to shows up, take opposition. There is a check. Just calmly just goes inside. King goes. Again, move back and wait. And whenever your opponent wants to shows up, take the opposition. There is a check. Now don't go on a b8, it will be promote. So simple, just go king to d8 and it's a stalemate. Like if the king goes on a d6, it's a stalemate, because the black king is no check and no square to go. And if the king moves anywhere else, simple, you will just capture the pawn. And once again, this is insufficient material draw, because both the side don't have the winning material. So just it. Next point. Now over here you will see that the king is front of the pawn. So now is it winning? Maybe. So but this position is white to play. And after the move king to e4, black will play the move king to e6. You know, black is taking the opposition. Yeah. So after the move king to d4, again it will go back to king to d6, king to c4, and again king to c6. And as we see already in the previous position, after the pawn push on a d4, the king moves here, and that's it. Right? Again, the same situation happened. If the pawn push, it will just move back and wait for it. And whenever the king wants to shows up, black will take the opposition. So it's this position is also a draw, which we already seen the previous position. The same result you will get over here. Next position. Now here comes the change. There is a space between king and his pawn. Now what white will play? White will play his pawn on a d3. Now it's black's turn. Now try to understand the situation. In this position, in the previous position we see, in this position it was a white's turn. Okay, but now in the same exact position, this is black's turn. And now when the black, for example, moves on a e6. Okay, so here if he wants, if the white wants, white can go for the opposition also. Okay, and this move back. Now what is the difference? White is taking the opposition. In the previous position, as you will see, the black was taking the opposition. Here white is taking the opposition. And when the king goes to c6, here the outflanking concept comes. The king goes to c6, I will move to e5. The opposite direction, king to e5. King goes back. Now king to d5. White is taking the position. King moves here on a e7. King to c6. King to move on a d8, and king moves to d6. So once again, white is taking the opposition. And one of the thumb rule I just wanted to tell, if your king is on the 6th rank, if your king is on the 6th rank and on the same file you have a pawn, no matter where, of course it's in a pawn endgame, okay, it's not like that opponent has two rooks. So if your king is on the 6th rank and on the same file if you have a pawn, no matter where your pawn it is, no matter whose turn it is, this position is winning, except rook pawns. Okay, I will explain that. And after the move king to d6, just king moves to example e8. It just a win. It just a win. That's a thumb rule. And for the black, this will be the 6th rank, because the black starts from the 8. So 8, 7, 6, 5. So this will be the 6th rank. And on the same file, if the black has a pawn and white king is alone, it's a win. No matter whose turn it is, no matter where the pawn it is. If it's black to play, then also winning. If it's white to play, then also winning. Same in this position also. If this position is white to play, it's a win. Black to play, it's a win. No matter where the pawn it is, it's a win for white. And after the moved king here, you see, now you will see the black is taking the opposition, no problem. And if he moves to c8, once again the outflanking will comes. Or if he moves to the e8, the outflanking comes and the pawn will just move for the promotion. But the same position, if you see the exact same position, if I will shift to rook file, basically this one. Now we see the exact position I just shifted on the rook file. Now this position is draw. Why? Thumb rule. If in the rook pawn, when you have the rook pawn for the promotion and opponent is controlling the promotional square, then it's a draw. Now example over here like g4, and I'm just putting in the back, okay, the same thing when I told you, when your king is on the 6th rank and on the same file if you have a pawn, no matter whose turn it is, no matter whose where the pawn it is, it's a win, except the rook pawn. Now over here, as you can see, it's a rook pawn. So if the pawn moves, the simple what he will do, the king will just move g8 h8, g8 h8, g8 h8, and the white cannot remove the king from there. It doesn't matter, like whatever the move it is, he will just move g8 h8, g8 h8, g8 h8. So simple thumb rule, if the rook pawn is there and opponent is controlling the promotional square, because over here as you can see the black king is controlling the promotional square, then it's a draw. So, and if you're dealing with it, so your first priority is, of course you have to move the pawn, but you have to control the promotional square as well, otherwise it will be. That's it for today, and thank you so much for watching.